Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to edit shapes and objects in Blender to make epithelial cells. And we're going to use this microscopic image as our reference. Okay, let's begin. We can keep the default cube, but we need to scale it. You can use the S key on your keyboard to scale, or S plus X, Y, Z to scale it along one of the axes. So I'm gonna get this along the X-axis and Y-axis to make it a bit taller. I want it to look like a tall rectangle. And you can use G to move it up or move it to left or right if you want. Don't forget to apply the scale. Now let's go to edit mode by pressing tab. This is our square. It has 8 surfaces. One thing that is useful here is that this option here, that's for selecting vertices like that, or edges like this, or a surface like that. And you can also select them by switching between 1, 2, 3 on your keyboard. Okay. So this is very simple geometry. We need to add a modifier here, subdivision surface, to increase the geometry. Let's increase the level to 2. And you can see it's pretty round right now. That's because there's no loop cut in this cube. To make loop cuts, you can use this tool here, or press Control R on your keyboard. Let's add 2, move it down a little bit. We can change this later too, so don't worry too much about it. Let's go back to object mode and apply this subdivision surface. Now we cannot change that after we apply it. Back to edit mode. Let's get a top view. Now we want to use these surfaces on the top to extrude those pili-like structures on top of these epithelial cells. We can use this. Let's actually select these surfaces, and we can use a tool called loop tools and circle. You see it's very rough. That's because it doesn't have that many surfaces to work with. So if we undo what we did, let's select these surfaces and the ones around it. You can hold down Shift to add to your existing selections or use this option here. And then right click, subdivide. Now we have more surfaces to work with. Now let's go back again here, select these surfaces, do another loop tool. We can use S key to scale this a little bit, or to rotate it. Yeah, I think it's not bad. Okay. I'm gonna use G to move it up a little bit. So the keys that we're gonna use a lot here are S for scaling, G for moving objects around, R for rotating, and E for extruding. So let's rotate this a little bit. Because if we actually extrude from it right now, it's going to go a different direction. So we need to rotate it a little bit. Let's move it up, see how it looks. Maybe a bit more. Let's scale it a little bit more. Okay, now it's getting better. Now we extrude the scale, rotate, maybe moving it a little bit, extrude again, scaling it, rotating, and extrude. This is to give it more like an organic shape. Zoom in a little bit. So we need to scale the top a little bit because they are not so sharp. These pillars, they're not so sharp at the top. They are a little bit like inflated. Let's do another extrude, a smaller size, maybe like that. Let's go to the top view. Select these middle vertices. Back to side view. Move it up a little bit. Scaling. It's not so bad. We need to add subdivision surfaces again. So now it's a bit smoother. Increasing it so you can see how it's gonna look like after we are done with it. We can also right click and we have to select all of it. Right click. Here is shade smooth. You can see it, maybe go to object mode, shade smooth. Okay. And another thing we can do is let's go to Wireframe. Select these middle edges or vertices. You need to be in Wireframe to make sure when you are selecting this, it's going to select the one behind it as well. If you are in the solid view, it's only going to select the top ones, the front ones. Okay. To give it a little bit more organic shape, I think we can scale the middle part a little bit. Let's see how it looks in solid view. And then maybe here too. Actually, let's add a lookup here. Select that one. Moving it a little bit. Same here. We just want to give it a more natural, organic look. Like that. It's not so bad. We can also increase the subdivision surfaces if you want it to be smoother than this. Well, it looks a bit flat, but that might be something we can do later. If you're increasing the subdivision, make sure you're also increasing it for render, because this is the viewport. Later when we want to render, you want these things to be the same, so your rendered image would look same as what you see in your viewport. But the more subdivision surfaces you're adding, because it's just the geometry is increasing, it might make the software run slower depending on your computer. So you probably want to keep it at 2 for now. Let's go back to edit mode. So now you can select more of these surfaces, like maybe a few from here, do the same thing again. And and maybe a few more, and just do the same and extrude from those surfaces to add a few more of these pilies. One thing I forgot to mention, if you don't see these, when you right click, if you don't see this loop tool circle, you need to go to edit, preferences, add-ons, find loop tools here, and check that box. Okay, so I added a few more of these peelies and extrusions to give it a look like this. But let's try something else. If you go to a sculpting tab here, let's go to solid view. I love these sculpting tools, although they work better when your mesh is a bit more, it has more, more geometry. This one is pretty simple. If you look at the wireframe mode, see it's a very simple mesh. It works better when you have more, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to increase the mesh because we're going to work with duplicating this object multiple times, and it's going to the files are going to get heavier. So let's just work with it this way. We can try this grab tool here to, if you want to increase the size of the brush, hold down F or Shift F for increasing or decreasing the intensity of it. So let's grab this thing a little bit and pull it up. I think it looks better. And we can also use the blob or the inflate to inflate it a little bit. And then maybe here, let's increase this. It was very flat, so I'm trying to give it a little bit more dimension. And see how it looks if we make it small. Yeah, we can't do too much here because the mesh is very basic. Alright, I think it looks good. You can use the smooth tool to smooth it out a little bit. If there are like rough areas. Okay. I think that's good for now. Let's go back to layout. Okay, so we're gonna add a nucleus. These cells have these rough looking elongated nucleus. To do that, let's add another mesh, this time a UV sphere. We can move it up to work on it, and then we'll bring it back down and put it within the cell. Scale it to make it smaller, then scale it along the z-axis to make it a little bit elongated, then x-axis, maybe a little bit like that. Okay, we can resize it again later. Now add a subdivision modifier. So I'm going to shade it smooth. To add that rough texture, we're going to use this other modifier called Displace. It's in the Deform tab. Press that and then press New to create new texture. And now we're going to go to Texture tab. From this one, the type of texture, we can choose a Stucci. That's not how it should look. So we're going to need to change the parameters to get to the look that we need. Press Improve Purling for the noise spaces. Go back to modifier tab, lower the strength because this is too strong. Let's go to -1 or -2. Then back to texture tab. You can play with the size to get a look that you like. Maybe something like this. Also, let's scale the object. Apply scale. I usually scale the object every time I resize it. Okay, so now it looks very different. Let's lower the size. It might be, and we can play with the strength here, but I think it deforms it too much. We can also change other types of texture. Let's try Voronoi. This one is not bad. Too intense probably, so let's lower the intensity. I think this is good. You can play with this criteria here, size, the intensity, or go back to the modifier tab and change the strength here. I think it looks good for now. Now let's put it back in the cell, but probably need to resize it again. Be easier if you go to wireframe mode, bring it back down using the G on your keyboard, scale again, it's too big. Move it around until you like it. I think it's good for now. Okay. Now it's time for coloring and materials, which is very fun. So we need to give the cell a little bit of a transparent material so we can see through it and see the nucleus. First, let's go to Render tab, change our render engine to circles, change it to GPU compute. Okay, now we go to viewport. This is where we actually see the lighting and the material. Let's move the light a little bit. We have a default light here. If it's not there, you can add light by pressing Shift A, and different type of lights here: point, sunlight, spotlight, area light. Pick the one you like, play with it. You can change the intensity or the color of it from the light tab. You need to select the light first and then go to the light tab. So I'm just going to move this a little bit closer, change the radius to 1. Leave it there for now. Select the cell, go to Material tab, add a new material. To give it transparency, this is the thing that we need to change the alpha value. So I start lowering it down, and you can see we start seeing the nucleus. Let's change the color a little bit. Pick whatever you like. I'm going to bring the light a bit lower. And if I change the nucleus, we can also rename the objects here to be easier to find them. So that was nucleus, the sphere, the cube is the cell. So now let's select the nucleus, give that one a new material too. That one doesn't need to be transparent. Just gonna give it maybe, you can change the roughness value. If you lower it down to 0 or somewhere between 0 to high, it's gonna get a shiny look. If you increase it above half, you're gonna see it starts looking like a rough, maybe matte plastic. I think for this one here, shiny probably is a better option to reflect the light. Okay. Now we need to copy this object multiple times. The best way to do it is to use the array modifier here. The problem is that it's going to apply it to only one of these, either the cell or nucleus, depending on which one we choose. And there are ways to do that, to apply it to both of them, but it's a bit more complicated, and I want to keep this tutorial simple. So I'm going to join the two objects as one object and then apply the array modifier to it. If we select nucleus and then also select the cell and then Control J or Command J to join them, as one. But you can see the nucleus is losing its texture. That's because we need to apply those modifiers. So if we go back, select the nucleus, go to the modifier tab, and we need to apply first the subdivision surface modifier and then the texture modifier. The thing is that when you do that, you cannot change that again. And again, there are ways to keep everything the way it is and still multiply them, but there's a lot more settings involved, and this would keep it easy. So just apply it, make sure you like the look of it, and then apply the modifiers. And then go to the cell again and also apply that one. Now, if you select them and join them, sometimes the join function doesn't work. Now we go to array modifier. This adds, it's kind of like a mirror image of the object, but we need to set the x to 0 because we want it to, or you can do it along the x-axis too, but the way I have it here, I need to multiply it along the y-axis. I increase this to see where I like it. Let's get a, sorry, not that one. Okay, I think it's good now. And then you can increase the count as many as you like. So let's put 30 for now. So it will look like this. And we can move it to here. So that's how it would look like. Now we want to these copies of the object to follow a curve. To do that, let's hide the array for now. Add a Bezier curve. This is the curve. Let's rotate it. We press tab to go to edit mode. Now we can edit the shape of the curve. You can use these handles on each side. These are basically for selecting the vertex, and then you can move it around. Or if you select the handle and then move it, this way you can edit the shape of the curve. So I'm going to go for a look that looks like the gut lining. So maybe you can use Extrude to create more vertices and extend it. And then extrude again. You can get creative here and create the curve that you like, the look of it. Could be anything that you like. I'm just gonna go for this. And maybe adding a few more. So this is how my curve looked like, how I edited. I also brought the cell put it somewhere in the middle and disable the array modifier for now. One thing we need to check is the direction of this path, so this curve. If you go to edit mode and go here, check this normal box, that will show you the direction of your curve. If it's the other way, you can select all of them by press A, go to segment and switch the direction. So mine from this angle, from this view, it's left to right. Back to object mode, select the cell, make sure we apply all the transformations. We move it around, scale it, so we press all transforms. And then let's activate the array again. I decreased the count to 4. But you can do as many as you want, but instead of that, we can also change the type from fixed count to fit curve and select this Bezier curve. That would increase the count or decrease it, basically adjust the count to fit to that curve. Now select the cell again and add the curve modifiers under Deform tab. And then for the object, select the Bezier curve again. It's going the wrong direction because it's along the x-axis by default. So change that to y. So it's now aligning it along the y-axis, along the curve. It's not overlapping on it, but that doesn't matter. If you go back to the original object and move it along the x-axis a little bit, probably we can find the position that overlays the curve, but that doesn't matter to us. The one thing that matters though is this like perpendicular to what it should be by 90 degree. So if let's deactivate this, deactivate or hide the array as well. The easiest way to fix this would be if we rotate this by, I think would that be along the x, no, along the y-axis by 90 degree. Let's check that. Yeah, that would look good. Okay. So that's how it look like. We can adjust the size if you want, but make sure you apply the transforms again if you change the size. Okay. So now let's add a little bit of volume behind this, so it will look like that it's a cross section of the cells. To do that, let's go behind the cells, go back to solid view. So this was our curve. You can use this to lock it or unlock it. It's this tool here. I locked it so it doesn't move. But when you lock it, you can't select it. So this curve, we want to build some volume into it. So I'm going to lock it again, and I'm going to add a UV sphere. Move it to here, adjust the size. This is how I'm going to do this. If you found a better way, let me know. I tried a few different things and it was a little bit difficult. So I'm curious to know if someone can come up with a better way of doing this. go to Wireframe, edit mode. If we select this somewhere in the middle, yeah, I think that's good. And get rid of these vertices. Basically, you want to cut it in half. And now, back to here. Turn on this thing called proportional editing. It's usually off, but you can switch it on. And you're going to see how it works. So if you select these vertices, and you need to be in wireframe mode to make sure you're selecting all of them. And now if you press G or S or whatever tool, the function is gonna be proportional instead of basically absolute. So if you switch this off and if we move this, it's just gonna affect the vertices that we selected. But if you use proportional editing, it's gonna affect the other vertices around it as well and do it in a proportional way. And that the intensity of it depends on this circle. So if you press G on your keyboard, you're going to see this circle, which is the radius of how this thing is going to affect the other mesh, the mesh around it. And you can increase it or decrease the radius of the circle by the wheel on your mouse or the middle button. So let's say if it's that big and I start moving things around, gonna see how it's working. And okay. Now I'm gonna get rid of these bottom vertices and add some loop cuts here. The shortcut for loop cuts is Ctrl R. Okay. Now we're gonna use the proportional editing again. It's a little bit difficult to see, but if we select this very last vertex, but this time we don't want it. Actually, let's pick the other one. We need to decrease the radius of it because we don't want it to be too intense. And then move it along the axis. Then the other one. And try to match it with the curve behind it. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you want to get as close as possible. Okay, I think it's good now. This is how it would look like. Here you see there's a bit of issue here because I probably selected the wrong vertex, but we can fix it if I go here, switch this off, and then just move it around a little bit. I probably should move that one back in. Okay. So. It's a bit better. And we can fix it later too. And it's probably this part is not going to be seen from the view we're going to have at the end. So, but you get the idea of how to edit the shape. Okay, now do the same for the other side. So this is what I have now. Let's go to edit mode. It's a little bit messy. If yours look like mine, let's add some loop cuts to the mesh. Loop cut tool is this one, or you can use Control R or Command R. Okay. Now go back to object mode and shade a smooth. Subdivision surface, and then let's add some texture. So use this displace modifier. It's gonna look like this, but don't worry. It's gonna look even worse. Now we just reduce the strength, and that should fix it. I like usually minus 0.1 or 0.2. And let's also add a solidify modifier, which adds a little bit of thickness to it. This is 0.1. Let's increase it to 0.2. Okay, now go to texture tab and pick the texture you like. I usually go with the Stucci. Improved Perlin, probably, yes. Okay, actually, see how does it look if we apply scale. Yeah, it looks better. Okay. So now I move it closer to the cells. Put it right behind it. Let's go to render view. You can move the light to this side so we can see better, although it's very bright. Okay. Maybe a little bit more of the texture. Okay, I like it now. Pick the color you like and the material. Let's see if we go with the too much. Something like that. We can change the color of the cells. Remember, because we merged the two mesh that we had, the nucleus and the cell, now it's one object, but it keeps this material separate. So maybe making it a little bit darker to show better. I go back and forth with colors a lot. Let's leave it for now. And then just copy this with Shift and D, move it to the other side. So again, there should be a better way to do this. And we might need to increase the size a little bit along the z-axis. It's not tall enough, I think. It doesn't cover the bottom. Then, oops. Maybe I did it too much. Okay. I think it's better now. Now let's set up the scene and the camera. If let's add a plane to the bottom first. Shift A, mesh, plane. Scale it. And let's set up the camera. Select the camera. and lock it to view. Press this or 0 on your keyboard to go to camera views, and then move it using Shift, the middle button, or the mouse wheel, or you can use the location, transform and location tab. And just get a view that you like. The bounding box, if it's too zoomed in, go to view, unlock this, and then use the mouse wheel to increase the size of the bounding box, and then lock it to camera view again. Now you can change this ratio by going to here, the output tab. Maybe I increase the height. I think now I need to bring back this thing. Then you can use the mouse wheel or command and mouse wheel to zoom in and get a view that you like. I think I like to get a zoomed in view. Maybe like that. Another thing I like to do with the camera is setting up depth of field, which is focusing on part of the scene and blurring out the rest. To do that, first we need to add, let's get out of the camera view. Let's add an empty plane axis. That's where we would, so we're gonna focus on that empty plane axis, which is not really a mesh, it's just a marker kind of. But wherever we put it and we focus on it, then everything else will be blurred out because the camera needs to pick an object to focus on. And if you pick on the cells or the nucleus or anything in this scene, it's just going to be all of them. It's not going to select one of them. So it's better to use an empty plane axis. Let's put let's move it to here. I kind of like to focus on, I think this is where I would like to focus. Okay, now we go to camera, select the camera, go to camera tab, select depth of field, and then decrease the f-stop. Oh, actually, we gotta select our focus object, which is the plane empty axis. So you can see the behind it is a little bit blurry, but if you want to do it more, just decrease the f-stop. This is exactly like how cameras do it, actual cameras. See the behind it is now getting blurry. I think this is good. If you want to see it better, we can go to the shading view. I hope my computer doesn't crash. Okay. It's not that great. One thing I should tell you, can see a camera effect in the solid view or wireframe. It's only these two, the viewport shading and viewport, the other one, rendering. Okay, I think it's good. Okay, now let's work a little bit on the background. Get out of the camera view, scale this plane along the y-axis a little bit. move it to the right side because we don't see the left side from that. Unless you, from your camera angle, you can see the left side. Otherwise, we don't need that part. That's how it would look like. Okay, and let's go to edit mode. With your plane selected, go to edit mode. Choose this edge. Don't forget to switch to edge select mode. And then extrude along the z-axis. And with the edge selected, press Ctrl B or Command B to go to bevel tool, which you can see it here as well. And then use your mouse, move it around to get this, and use the wheel or the middle button to, and then scroll it up or down to get this. So it will look more smooth. Okay. If you get out of the edit mode and go to camera view, that's how it would look like. If you want to get rid of all these lines, switch this off so you can see how it would look like. These lines, they don't show up in the render. It's just for your view. Okay, now let's add some material to this plane. Let's do object, scale, go to shader editor. Let's add a material. Let's do texture coordinate node. And you would need a mapping. If you don't see these are the last ones I've used before. That's why they show up here. Just search for the name. And then for the texture, Voronoi texture, and then a color ramp. Okay, now if I connect the color ramp to my basis material, and then distance to factor, vector to vector, object to vector. Okay. Now let's do a fun smooth one. And lower the scale because that looked too big. Okay, I think I like it. And then we can change the color. So right now it's black and white. Let's see, maybe a bit of blue. Pick the color you like. Okay, so I changed my camera ratio a little bit to get a better view and then duplicated everything so the end of it doesn't look empty. Just remember, if you duplicate, make sure you duplicate the curve so the epithelial cells follow the curve and they just don't look like a straight line. Now let's change the lighting a little bit. So this is the first light we had here. We can keep it, but if you like to add more lighting, Shift A, add a point light, and let's move it. Back to the camera view. Now let's change the radius, maybe 0.5. And then the intensity, we need to increase the power. And then you can play with the color of the light. And then you can change the color of the light for this one too. Right now it's white. By default it's white, but you can change it to whatever you like. Maybe a little bit softer. You can also choose to just not have this light and just play with the smaller lights to get the look that you like. If you don't want any of these lights, you can either hide them from this viewport, but you need to make sure you also hide them from the rendering so they don't show up when you render the image, or just delete them. Okay, I'll let you figure out the lighting that you like. When you decided on the lighting and the colors that you like, now it's time to render. Go to Render View, Render tab, and make sure you've selected Cycles, and put it on GPU compute. And then for the rendering, we don't need 4,000 samples. That will take forever. So probably somewhere between the sharp. If you want a very sharp image, make sure you select more. But I usually go somewhere between 300 to 400, and I think that's enough. If you like it to be very shiny and smooth, check this box, denoised. I kind of like it a little bit grainy, so I get rid of that. And then for the light path, if you don't need 12, if you go to 6, that makes the rendering time faster without affecting the image that much. Okay, so make sure you've saved your work, and then just go to render and render the image.